What's up, guys? EnderUnknown here. I am back for episode 8 already of our Unity Spelunky series, Spelunky-Style game series. And today, like I said last week, we're going to be working on a little bit lengthier of a topic, and that's going to be traps and enemies. So I guess today I'm just planning on getting the basic generation stuff figured out and adding the actual enemy and trap in, and then we'll do how they interact with the player probably next week. So we'll allow the player to pick up gold, we'll allow the enemy to damage the player, and vice versa, and the trap to damage the player or whatever. So, yeah. Because this is going to be a little longer of an episode, I'm going to just get right into it. To start, we're going to make the enemy. I'm going to be reusing the player's graphics. That's just because, well, I don't really have a good excuse. I don't really want to go make a bunch of sprites and animations again, so I'm just going to use the ones that we already made. Although you guys are free to do whatever. I will recolor the player, however. So, yeah. To get started, I'm going to just drag and drop the player over here. I'm going to, I guess we'll zoom in here and start modifying this prefab. Well, actually, we don't want to modify the prefab. We want to delink it. Unpack prefab completely. There we go. So we're gonna delete the main camera. We have our sprite. I'm going to go for each of these sprite elements, and I'm going to give them a nice infected purpley look. Yeah, I think that'll be good. Maybe a bit dark. So we should be able to lighten that just a little. Yeah, that looks good, I think, for what we need to do. On the actual player itself, I'm going to get rid of the player, or so on the actual enemy, I'm going to rename this so I don't call it player. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to call this basic patrol enemy. And we're going to get rid of our player motor script here because we don't want that on our enemy. There we go, that all looks good. Yeah, so that should be pretty much all that we need, I think. Okay, so yeah, we have our sprite thingy over here with the animator. Now, it does have a player animation controller, but that should be fine. Because, yeah, we're just going to have it walk. And I think all this stuff is programmatically set. So I guess we'll just have to set it in the code as though we did with the normal player. But again, I'm not too concerned or worried about animations at the moment. Anyways, so yeah, this is our player. I'm going to go get their hitbox here. Or enemy, I should say. I'm going to leave the hitbox the same. That should be fine. And now we actually have to go into the scripting. So I'm going to make a C# script called, I don't know, I guess patrol, enemy patrol. And we'll open that up in Visual Studio, and I will be back when that is done. Okay, cut, delete last segment. Now that we have our enemy patrol opened, we can get started with the code. I guess the first thing is delete all the random stuff that was in there before. This is actually going to extend a player controller. So player controller is actually a really bad name for it because this controller works with pretty much all of the it pretty much applies motion, and all we have to do is write a simple movement script here. So we will be using the player controller for actually a lot of the enemy stuff. It's the player motor that's specific to the player. So this would be the enemy patrol would be like an enemy motor. Anyways, we are going to make a int called speed, and a lot of these are pretty explanatory anim. So this will be the rate at which the actually we could make this a float. The rate at which the enemy moves, the animator which controls the enemy. We'll want to do a transform called edge detector. Ed detector. There we go. And then a moving right to boolean. So in our start method, pretty much all that we're going to need to do is determine what direction we want them to start moving, and this will be done at random. So I guess we'll do if random dot next random range. Sorry, this is Unity's random, not the system's random. So I'm pretty sure. Oh, it's random.range. Okay, that's really annoying, but yeah, and it is exclusive, so we're gonna want 0 and 2. If that is equal to 0, then moving right is going to equal true. And actually, we can do a fancy trick to shorten this. We can just copy and paste all of this code here and just set moving right equal to that. So if it's equal to 0, then that'll be true, and then otherwise it'll be false. So that's all we really need to do with the start method. We're going to continue on to update. Also pretty easy. We're going to have a vector2 called move, and that is going to start by equaling a vector2.0. If we are moving right, then we're going to have our movement x is going to equal 1, so this really just specifies direction, and we're going to have to make sure that our rotation is correct too. So we're going to start off by just getting our transform rotation. Rotation is going to equal quaternion Euler angle of vector 3, 0. So pretty much this is going to set the rotation equal to 0, which is going to be our default because our character is facing right. And then when they change positions or change directions, then we'll have to apply a rotation, and that's what we're going to do here. It'll be else. This is the same code that I used in our player, I believe, or more or less. So move x is going to equal -1, and our transform rotation is going to equal quaternion Euler, and this one is a little bit different. It's our vector 3 up multiplied by 180. So we'll rotate it 180 degrees. In other words, we just flip it. So that's all we really have to do here. So if we continue on, we are going to actually, so how we keep this person from falling off their, because they'll patrol. If we don't want them to fall off their block they're patrolling on, and we do this by pretty much just using a ray, which is like an invisible line, to determine, hey, there's not an edge here. And so what we'll be able to do is figure out, using this ray, for our basic patrol enemy, we kind of just want them to stay on the same layer. Some of the enemies will let move down and jump back up. I want to just do a basic enemy, and of course you guys can make them as challenging or complex as you like. Really, it's just the generation that is really important, but the AI you can set up however you'd like. So we want to do our edge detector. So this is the origin of our raycast, the edge detector's position. The direction is going to be vector 2.down, and our distance is just going to be one float. So then, if the ray's collider is equal to false, as though it doesn't detect anything, and actually we should probably have an or on here, or ray.collider dot game object dot layer is equal to layer mask dot get name to layer, I believe, and then no collision. So we're gonna actually make a new layer, but we'll do that in Unity in a little while here. So if that's the case, then we're is this thing still working? Anyways, we're gonna set our my headset shut off. It tends to do that. Moving right is going to equal the opposite of moving right. So if it's false, then it'll be true, and vice versa. So this is pretty simple. Then this is for the animation here. So move x, if that is equal to 0, then we're going to set the walking to to false. This will never happen with this character unless we set it at a speed of set bool is walking false. Okay, there we go. Because the way we're programming it, it's just going to keep bouncing between locations or moving back and forth. But I guess, if it ever does get stopped, or maybe we add a like a slowing ray, or I don't know, some item or trap that prevents it from moving, then this will just be there for that. So we want to set the target velocity equal to move multiplied by the player speed. And that is actually it for our basic logic for this player. We have to add one more thing, and this is going to be on trigger enter 2D. And so, but basically what this is going to do, we're going to have a trigger on our edge detector that will detect if we collide with walls. So if our collision, or our call, game object layer is equal to a layer mask dot name to layer, and we want to check if this name to layer is the default layer, because if it is, then we're going to want the we're going to want them to change the AI to change directions. So then it's just that. So yeah, that is actually all that we need to do in our enemy patrol. So we are going to go set up the rest of the enemy in Unity here. Oh, one thing I forgot here, this needs to be a Collider 2D. Anyways, on to Unity. Okay, so now that we are back in Unity, we are going to drag the enemy patrol script onto our player here. We are going to want to set their speed equal to 1.5 or something like that. The animator is going to be the one attached to our sprites, and then we need to create a empty game object called, I don't know, edge detector, and that we want a little one of these dot thingies for. Now here we do have to see the enemy's hitbox, which I actually want to make a little bit smaller, maybe like that, because this raycast will detect the enemy here. And actually, let's turn off grid snapping. So we want it just about right at the edge of their hitbox, and it's kind of hard to see, but that should be good there. So that will hopefully not detect their hitbox. If it does, then we will fix it. It shouldn't. Anyway, we are going to just want to drag this into the transform here, so edge detector. On the edge detector, we are actually going to want a box collider 2D. We're going to want to check this box is trigger to be true, and we're going to want to make this considerably smaller, so it's just a tiny little dot thingy, like right in the center here. And what this will do is if it collides with the wall, it'll have the player turn around, or the AI turn around here. Yeah, so that should be good. We are going to need to make a new layer, and I see I forgot to delete it from my testing. I should really make like a second project. So I guess just click add layer, go down to user layer 10 and then type no collision. I guess this is kind of not a great name because it implies that it's colliding with nothing, but that's not actually the case. What this is going to do is prevent our player from colliding. Well, we'll have to set that up later, but it'll prevent this person, the enemy here, from colliding with like gold and such, and we'll do some more with that later. But anyways, yeah, make the new collider, go and set the player or the enemy to this, change the children as well. We're going to want to go into our edit project settings, physics 2D, down, and then where it says no collision and no collision, we want to uncheck this box down here because we don't want things with no collision to collide with each other. Um, so that should be it that we need to do there. I'm trying to think of anything else. I already had this unchecked because, like I said, I was testing and I forgot to undo this all. Anyways, that should be good. We're going to want to go onto our treasure gold prefab and then set that layer to no collision and change the children as well. And that should be pretty much it for our actual enemy. If we go place them in the world here and then start the game, I should be able to go find them. Okay, and that's not what's supposed to be happening. I presume that they are probably triggering. So either this needs to be moved down farther and maybe out a little ways. Okay, let me go fix that. I'll be right back when I figure out what's wrong. Okay, I figured out the issue, and that was with our collider here on the trigger. So basically what's happening is the ray was being sent from the center of the collider here, and it detected this collider. So it's pretty easy fix. We just have to go to our box collider here and move it so that it's above the center here. Like that. And it should still be able to detect. I mean, it doesn't really even need to be this big. It should detect if this guy runs into a wall here. I'm going to make sure that everything is still in close. We'll save that and press play, and this should work. I mean, of course, he was stuck in the floor there. And yeah, so now he's just patrolling back and forth. Maybe his speed's a little too fast. I don't know. Yeah, that's probably better, if not even 7.5. I don't know. You guys can play around with the number 0.75. We don't want him moving. Not 75. Don't want him moving too fast. Now I think after I sped him up, he got stuck in a wall or something. But yeah. So I guess if I go and pull him over here, he'll just totter over that direction, turn around, and march the other way until this edge here, and then he'll turn around again. Now, right now, our player collides with him, and we have problems. So I think he'll turn around when he hits us, yeah, but we'll fix that in a we'll fix that once we do player interactions because we want him to damage us and kind of ignore our hitbox for movement, but not for damage. Anyways, that is all we have to do with our player here. So I'm going to make that a prefab folder, and I guess we'll call it enemy me's. And we'll drag our basic patrol enemy in there. And then delete him from the scene. Inside of our scripts folder, sprite scripts, we're going to have to open up generation and we'll continue working on from there. However, we are going to, well, we'll eventually make a living script or something so that he can be damaged. But yeah, for right now, we're just going to go into our Visual Studio and get the generation script opened. Okay, so now that we are in our treasure script, I am down by where we did our treasure area. Uh, what we're gonna want to do is actually go all the way back up to the top and make a another game object array of enemies, and we'll just go back down and pretty much should be pretty simple. So else if the count is I guess we could just do else and then or else if and then just random range. So the count's not gonna matter. So essentially it'll be uh yeah, no, the count does matter. Never mind. Yeah, so if the count is less than or equal to 3 and a random range, not random range, random dot range. There we go. We want enemies to be a little more frequently spawned frequently, and I guess we'll make that 0 and 3 or whatever, 4. If that is equal to 0, then we will spawn an enemy. So we'll get an index. It's going to equal pretty much the same code here. Enemies.length. We'll instantiate enemy, not treasure, at the position of index. Or so the enemy at the index of the list here, and then or the array, and then the position, quaternion identity, and that should be pretty much it. So when we go back and run this, we should see enemies spawn after we figure out some stuff in the inspector. So let's go do that now. One thing I did recall forgetting is that in our enemy, this really isn't that big of a deal. But if we open up our sprite editor, we want to probably select all these sprites and move their layer to default. Because they are not, or actually we could make a new sorting layer, I guess. Yeah, add sorting layer. We'll add enemy. We'll stick that in between player and default. And then head back and set all of these to enemy. So yeah, that should be all we need to do there. We're going to go back into our generator and drag and drop our basic patrolling enemy prefab into the enemies list. And then if I press start here, that's a few too many enemies, and we're having they aren't gonna like colliding with each other when they spawn like that. But yes, we do indeed have enemies, and wow, they're kind of funny looking. Just a lot of them got stuck on the top here. So yeah, but some of them are patrolling. You'll notice that our height here might need to be a little higher so it doesn't think the gold is something it can collide with. It'll collide with me, which I think is funny. Then we have this happening, which means two got spawned right on top of each other and their AI is having problems. Um, so yeah, that's gonna be something we're gonna have to fix here, cause we don't want enemies spawning in this fashion. Pretty much what we were going to want to do is set up a safe zone around the spawn door so that nothing can be spawned there, including probably treasure and items and traps, and then everything else is free game. As for the enemies who are spawning right next to each other and getting stuck, I think for one we could have more enemy types, and for two I think uh, some of the algorithm stuff probably needs to be changed a little bit. But for now I think I'm happy with how that is, and the simple solution would be to just turn down the rate at which they spawn, which we can do by just upping that number. Anyways, and I guess I will go into that. I'm going to do a updated algorithm video in the future that's going to use percents instead of just placing them in. But I want to get this started, how we're doing it now, and then we'll go upgrade to the more advanced system in a little while. pretty much then it'll be less of they follow spawning rules, and it'll be more so like, hey, areas that are more open are more likely to spawn enemies, but it's not a rule. Because right now we have it set that if there are a certain number of neighbors, it can or cannot spawn. So we'll fix that in the future. Anyways, the last thing we're going to do today are traps. Of course, we're not going to get any of the interaction in, but we're going to just get the trap figured out. I have spikes. I auto-imported them with the proper settings um, and whatnot. We're going to drag them into the scene. Going to... Oh, and the other thing with the enemies, I just remembered this. Transform. We want to zero this out. So, yeah, just remember to do that. Okay, yeah. Here we go. Spikes. We're going to add a box collider too. Spikes are going to be interesting. We're going to want them to damage players who fall on top of them and enemies that fall on top of them, but we're going to want them to just be, you know, something you can walk through other than that. So we are, in fact, going to change their... I'm going to zero this out here. We are, in fact, going to change the spikes to have a no collision hitbox or whatever. And we'll figure out... We'll use some math once we do the player interaction to figure out how, like, if a player or entity is falling on top of them, and then to kill it. Anyways, yeah, so we have our spikes here. This shouldn't take too long. We will have a trap component that will add to them. Their layer might even be placed on trap. We are going to add a sorting layer, and this will be called trap. It is going to go probably in between player and enemy, but maybe in front of them. I guess we could try in front so it looks like they're rifling through the back of the spikes. It'd be kind of neat if I had two sprites, and I could have done this, but I didn't. To have two sprites so you could, if the player is walking behind them, you could see the first spikes in front and then the other spikes in back. I don't know. Anyways, I guess, yeah, we'll just make that. We'll set the thing to trap. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. So this will be just really basic. I'm going to go create a folder. Traps. We'll drag our spikes prefab into the traps folder. And then we'll go delete this from the scene and handle the generation here. So I'll be back when I'm in Visual Studio. Okay, like we did with the last one, we're going to create another game object array called traps. Traps are going to have interesting spawning rules. So we'll probably actually... This might get changed once we define traps a little more, but for right now, pretty much what we're going to check is if the tile dictionary doesn't contain the location and it has a floor, we don't care about the count. We'll just have a chance for there to be a trap there. So, this will probably just be, I don't know, an else to both of these. So, if an enemy doesn't spawn and a piece of treasure doesn't spawn, then it'll try to spawn a chest or a trap. So this will be pretty easy. It'll be an index, like we have done always. Now, so this is for programmatic spawning. Of course, if you wanted to make this look better so that there's not just random spikes everywhere, you could add these to the actual room prefabs, which I'm realizing we haven't really done anything with in weeks. Might have to do something, I don't know. Traps. Index, position, and quaternion identity. Okay, yeah, so that's pretty easy. We may add more spawning rules in, so I don't really know. Uh, that would be when we get into some more of the traps. We might not want them to spawn in certain positions, so we could maybe just have like a function in the trap code that does a check or whatever. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyways, this is just the basics that I want to get done for today, so we're going to go back into Unity and make sure that everything's working. Now that we're back in Unity, it's as simple as dragging our spike trap into the traps there, or spikes, and then we should be able to save and press play here, and then there should be, well, that's quite a few spikes, quite a few more than was hoping for, and now that we got stuck in another player, but it does in fact work. Um, I forgot to put in the random aspect. So now wherever gold doesn't spawn, or an enemy doesn't spawn, spikes spawn. Which, hey, that ultra hardcore mode, I guess. This is extremely dangerous. Of course, as a player, we can just walk on them. These guys, AI freak out when on top of these things because they are technically a no collision, but uh they have a collider, and I don't really get this. So what my headset again. What doesn't make sense is to me is why this is set to no collision, and in our physics thingy, they're not supposed to be able to collide with the spikes. I think what they do is I think their AI tells them otherwise. I don't know. I'll figure it out and I'll let you guys know if that is a problem. I think it could just be an AI, something silly with their AI. So I'm gonna go see if I can fix that, and then I'll show you guys the fix. So I'll be back. Okay, so while I was unable to figure out the problem, I think it might be a Unity bug. I'm gonna try updating my Unity, and I'll get back to you guys and if I'm able to find anything by next week's video. This helped was to disable this little part of code here that checked if the ray collider's game object was a no collision. So I just removed that for now. And then in generation, the last thing we do want to do is make this an else if, so that we have uh, a random range between probably 0 and 4. So only about 1/4 of those actual traps will be spawned in. So I guess we'll go back to Unity, see how that looks, and again, I will try to figure it out for next time. Well, this is considerably less hectic. Again, we will be revamping this generation algorithm a little bit as we go, so that spikes can't spawn in this first little tile area, or we'll make some sort of immunity so that enemies and spikes and such can't spawn. But I guess for right now, I don't really care. I am happy that everything seems to work. We have spikes, we have gold, we have enemies. Uh, they're probably in a little bit too much of an abundance right now. All of them. I think there should be maybe a little more for traps and a little fewer enemies. Or maybe we'll just add more enemies to make it more exciting and more rooms and such. I don't know. You guys can do what you'd like. I guess I'm gonna see if I could go through, presuming we're gonna just ignore this. I'm gonna go through and see if that it would be possible not to die. Not thinking it's very likely right here. So I guess if I use the sprint jump, I can jump over them all, but that's kind of cheating. And then I just died on spikes. I do want to add like a camera look down method at some point. Yeah, see, this is what we need to fix. We'll do that with player interactions, and this is a little bit crazy. uh, I don't know. Yeah, so well, I'm gonna do my best to figure out why some of these problems are happening, and then if I'm able to fix them, I will. Uh, Again, I think it's a bug with the Unity collision matrix thingy that we were working with. So maybe if you guys have a newer version of Unity, it works. I'm gonna try updating mine, and we'll check back in next week with this. Like this should prevent collision, and maybe I'm just using it wrong. Uh, but for no collision and no collision, there shouldn't be collision. But physics 2D is the one we were using. I tried setting it in just normal physics, but that didn't work either. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys this week. I guess let me know what you guys want to see with this series. We're kind of getting to the end of the critical world building stuff, and then once we get to that, it'll just be polishing. And if there's anything in specific, let me know early so I can plan that out for a video. If not, then I don't know. This series will probably. I think I'm trying to get it to maybe 20 videos. I don't know. We'll see. Like when the content runs out, I'll start up a new series or whatever. I will note that I'm gonna continue this year trying to be best or be good about uh, moving back into the school year with YouTube still working or still working on the YouTube series that I have. Because I know I wasn't good about that last year. If I'm unable to do so, though, I will do my best to let you guys know and uh, figure something else out. Anyways, I'm hoping that won't be a concern. Thank you guys for watching, and Ender out.